I have another one of those deeper truths that can help people understand themselves in a much better way. And it's this: fear grows when you're internally divided. And I think that matters because a lot of people assume fear is only happening from what is happening around them. They look at the stress, the pressure, the uncertainty, the demands, the relationship, the symptom, the performance issue, the bad habit, the hard season, and they think, of course, I feel fear. Look at what's going on. And yes, outside life absolutely affects us. But I also think a lot of fear is not just about what is happening outside of us. A lot of fear is the strain of what is happening inside of us. And that is the deeper light bulb moment. Part of you wants peace, but another part is still feeding worry. Part of you wants change, but another part is gripping the familiar. Part of you wants freedom, but another part is still believes that control is needed. And part of you wants trust, but another part keeps rehearsing fear. Part of you wants to move forward, but another part keeps going back to the old identity. That creates strain. And I think a lot of people do not realize that some of what they are feeling is the pain of the inner contradiction. They just know they feel anxious, overwhelmed, pressured, tight, emotionally tired, mentally loud, even stuck. But many times what is really happening is they are trying to live in two directions at once. And that is exhausting. And I think this is one of the reasons people can look like they are doing all the right things on the outside and still feel like they are carrying so much fear inside. Because behavior is one thing, thought is another. You can try to act peaceful while thinking fearful thoughts. You can try to act disciplined while feeling deeply resistant. You can try to act calm while mentally bracing for everything that might go wrong. You can try to act confident while inwardly rehearsing self-doubt. You can try to change a habit while still emotionally depending on what that habit gives you. And when those things are split, strain grows. That strain often gets felt as fear. I think that is one of the most important things people can understand, because otherwise they keep trying to solve fear only at the surface level. They try to calm down, push through, manage the symptoms, control the outside, fix the behavior, act better, do better, try harder. And sometimes those things help temporarily, but the inner division stays in place. Fear often stays in place too. That's why real change has to go deeper. It has to go to the level of thought, belief, interpretation, inner agreement. So what part of you is still clinging? What part of you is still resisting? What part of you is still scared? I think this shows up in so many areas of life. It shows up in stress. A person says they want peace, but part of them still believes worry is what keeps them prepared. Part of them believes overthinking is what keeps them safe, and part of them believes pressure is what keeps them responsible. Part of them believes if they let go, everything will fall apart. So now they are split. They want peace, but they're still mentally loyal to fear. That creates strain, and then they wonder why they cannot relax. But the system is divided. It shows up in weight loss and wellness too. A person says they want health, they want change, they want consistency, they want freedom around food, but another part of them still wants comfort, still wants the old reward, still wants the emotional relief, still wants the familiar identity, still fears what it will feel like to not have the old coping pattern. So now they are split. And part of them wants the result, and part of them is afraid of what it takes to live differently. And that creates strain too. And sometimes people interpret that strain as, I have no discipline. I always sabotage myself. I just can't do this. But often what they are feeling is not lack of character. It is inner conflict. And that is such an important distinction. I think it shows up in performance too. An athlete says they want freedom, they want trust, they want flow, they want to perform to their true potential, but another part of them still wants control, still fears mistakes, still fears the pressure, still feels the need to protect, still doubts, still rehearses what could go wrong. So now they are split. They want to perform free, but they are thinking tight. That creates fear. That creates pressure. That creates over control. That creates the exact kind of state that makes performance harder. The same thing happens in golf, shooting, business, relationships, all of it. A lot of fear is not just the event, is the inner split around the event. And I think a lot of people would feel so much less shame if they understood that. Because then they would stop making fear automatically mean something is wrong with me. And they might start asking a much wiser question. Where am I divided right now? That question can reveal so much. Where am I saying I want one thing, but mentally feeding another? Where am I trying to move forward while still clinging backward? Where am I trying to force an outer behavior while my inner world is still fighting it? Where am I trying to be calm while still obeying fear? Where am I trying to trust while still gripping control? And that's where the real work begins, not in pretending the split is not there, not in shaming yourself for it, but in telling the truth about it, because truth is what starts bringing inner agreement. And I think a lot of healing is really that. It's inner agreement, not perfection, agreement. A person becomes less split, less contradictory, less divided, less mentally at war with themselves, less torn in two directions. And when that starts happening, fear starts losing some of its fuel. And that is the hopeful part, because fear is not always just a sign that life is dangerous. Sometimes fear is a sign that something inside is unresolved or misaligned or in conflict. And once you see that, you stop only trying to fight the feeling. Now you can get serious about the source. I think people are often so quick to say, I need to stop being anxious. I need to stop stressing. I need to stop overthinking. I need to stop doing this habit. I need to stop feeling this way. But a better question is sometimes, what part of me is in conflict right now? Because if you can see the split, you can start understanding the fear. And once you understand the fear, you can stop treating it like some mysterious enemy and start working with it as it's showing itself to you. I think one of the reasons people stay stuck is because they try to force themselves into change while inwardly resisting it. And that makes sense, because if part of you is afraid, force does not solve it, right? If part of you is afraid of letting go, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of changing identity, afraid of not being in control, afraid of not having the old comfort, then force just creates more pressure on top of the fear. That's why so many people feel like they are fighting themselves. They are. A lot of the exhaustion comes from the fight. That's why I think awareness matters so much more than people realize, because awareness helps you stop being blindly driven by the fear and start understanding the division underneath it. So instead of, why am I like this? It becomes, what part of me is scared? What part of me still believes the old way is safer? What part of me still thinks gripping is protection? What part of me still does not trust peace and change and softness and healing or release? That is a different conversation, and is a much kinder one too, because now you are not attacking yourself, you are understanding yourself, and understanding creates room for change. And I think that's especially important, because a lot of people have patterns that are so old, they mistake them for personality. They think, I'm just an anxious person. I'm just intense. I'm just controlling. I'm just emotional. I'm just someone who always struggles with this. I'm just not built like other people. But often those are not fixed traits. They are practice patterns. And many of those patterns were built around inner conflict and fear and the need to protect in some way. That does not mean they are permanent. It means they can be seen differently. And what can be seen differently can be changed. I think another important piece here is that people often think healing means the fear disappears instantly. But I don't think that's usually how it works. Healing often begins when the fear stops being the only voice with authority. When the fear is still there, but you see it sooner, question it sooner, obey it less automatically, feed it less aggressively, allow it less control over what comes next, that is progress. A lot of healing begins not when fear is totally gone, but when fear is no longer running the whole system unquestioned. And that is huge because now a person can begin choosing from a different place, a calmer place, a truer place, a more aligned place. And I think that is why correction starts at the thought level, because what you do comes from what you think. What you say yes to comes from what you believe. What you repeat comes from what you are aligned with internally. So if someone keeps trying to only change actions without looking at the thought conflict underneath the actions, they may keep recreating the same struggle. And that is why the inside matters so much. And I think one of the most helpful things a person can do is stop asking only, how is this fear going to go away? What is this fear showing me about where I'm divided? And that is a much deeper question. What would inner agreement look like here? Would it look like being more at peace? Would it look like releasing one old thought? Would it look like not feeding the fearful story? Would it look like letting go of one piece of control? Would it look like allowing discomfort without immediately escaping it? Would it look like choosing an alignment with what I actually want instead of what fear is telling me? That's where the work becomes real. So let me make this practical. Here are a few things I would invite people to do this week. First, when fear shows up, pause and ask, what part of me is divided right now? Just that one question, not what is wrong with me, not why am I like this? What part of me is divided? And then second, finish this sentence. Part of me wants blank, but another part of me wants blank. That can reveal so much. Part of me wants peace, but another part wants control. Part of me wants health, but another part wants comfort. Part of me wants trust, but another part wants certainty. Part of me wants change, but another part wants the familiar. That sentence can expose the split clearly. And third, which side have I been feeding more? Because what you feed more grows. If you're feeding the fearful side, then that's growing. If you're feeding the peaceful side, peace grows. So keep feeding the old story and the old story stays strong. If you keep feeding the new alignment, that gets stronger and that matters. So fourth, choose one small action this week that creates more inner agreement. Not a giant overhaul, one small move. Maybe it's not feeding the spiral. Maybe it's slowing the breath. Maybe it's telling the truth sooner. Maybe it's choosing not to obey the urge to over control. Maybe it's staying with the feeling instead of immediately escaping it. Maybe it's making one choice that lines up more with what you actually want than with what fear is telling you. One move matters because fear often grows when you are divided, and peace often grows when you become more aligned. That is the real takeaway. A lot of people think fear is only about life being hard, but many times fear is a strain of living in contradiction inside yourself. And once that contradiction begins to soften, fear begins to loosen too. And that is not small, that is huge. So if I were to leave you with one thing today, it would be this. A lot of fear is not just about the outside. A lot of fear is inner conflict. And that means your next step may not be trying harder. It may be getting more honest about where you are split, more honest about what part of you is scared, more honest about what fear is still trying to protect, more honest about what you say you want versus what you are still mentally feeding. Because when you bring those pieces into better alignment, life starts changing from the inside out. Fear grows when you're internally divided. So maybe this week, the real question is not, how do I feel less fear? Maybe it's, where am I divided? And what would it look like to become more internally aligned? That is where so much healing begins. And if you want help with this, I would love to help you. Check out everything I have for you at dawngrant.com and leave a comment on how this has impacted you.